and our first guest is Sokratis Georgiadis. You don't need any introduction here, of course, but still I want to say that Sokratis Georgiadis was a professor of the history of architecture and design here at the State Academy of Fine Arts until 2018. He studied architecture at the TU Berlin and worked as an architect in Greece for around 10 years. In 1986, he earned a doctorate with a work on Sigfried Giedion. He subsequently taught at the ETH Zürich and at the universities of Zurich and Bern and at the Kunsthochschule in Berlin. Sokratis, we are all extremely excited to learn more about Athens in the context of our index of monotony. Welcome, Sokratis Georgiadis.
Thank you, Stefan Trüby and the IGMA crew for this remarkable event. Good morning. New Athens was the title of an article in the Berliner Tageblatt on 5th of June 1931. It was written by Erich Mendelssohn, the architect who had given Stuttgart's modernism one of its happiest moments. Oh. Yeah. Through this building, the Schocken department store, a building that was foolishly demolished some 30 years after its erection. In his text, Mendelssohn summarized his impressions from a visit to the Greek capital in the spring of that same year. In the inner city, the disorder of Oriental cities still intermingles with the rigid order of Western monumentality, even to this day, he noted, and concluded that the Greeks were faced with a fundamental choice, either the Orient or Western culture. He himself pleaded for the latter, but not through the continuation of an uncreative paganism, that is classicism and its offshoots, but by taking an example from the battering ram of the Western elite troops. By that he obviously meant the European avant-garde. Westernization and modernization was the motto. This point of view was in perfect harmony with the ambitions of large parts of the Hellenic elites, not only as far as Athens and its architecture were concerned, but for the entire country. Such ambitions found their political representation in the third Venizelos government from 1928 to 1932, and in architectural terms in its construction policy. The most significant expression of this policy was a comprehensive program to build schools, which resulted in some 3,000 new schools, school units throughout the country in just a few years. The program served to fight illiteracy, but also to promote ethnic homogenization and integration. This had become urgent for two reasons. First, Greece's territory north of Mount Olympus, along with its multi-ethnic populations, had grown considerably after the Balkan Wars in the run-up to World War I. Second, the miserable failure of Greece's Asia Minor military expedition in 1922 brought over 1 million refugees to the mainland. The majority of the designs for the new schools were entrusted to young architects who were aligned with European modernism. The program, which was unique in its scope, even by European standards, gave Greek modernism its face. The blossoming of Greek modernism made Athens a convenient destination for the fall of the International Congresses of Modern Architecture, CM, in July-August 1933. But the choice of Athens was rather by accident. Moscow had originally been intended to be the venue of the Congress. Stalin's newly adopted anti-modernist cultural policy ruined this plan. However, even Athens hosted only a rather short section of the Congress. Its works took place mainly at sea, on a cruise ship of the Greek-owned shipping company Empirikos, named Patris II, between Marseille and Athens, and on the way back. Patris, the name of the streamer, means fatherland. But this Noah's Ark of modernism expressed in an almost symbolic way the direct opposite of that, its homelessness. Modern architecture was in dire straits around 1933. Stalin has already been mentioned. Perhaps even more serious was Hitler's rise to power in Germany. National Socialism deprived modern architecture of one of its most important domains, if not the most important one, and persecuted a large number of its proponents. Athens was but a footnote in this drama. Ironically, CM at Sea, the Congress between water and sky, as one of the participants put it, this displaced enterprise had set itself the task of imposing an entirely new spatial order in a global scale by setting and promoting the guidelines of modern urbanism. The unwavering determination with which CM's architects approached their work is impressive in light of the adversity they were facing. However, the outcome of the endeavor turned out much more modest than its initial intention. 34 cities were analyzed, 29 European, 3 North American, 2 Southeast Asian. The authors of the analysis, even of non-European cities, were European architects. There was little sign of globalism. The perspective was strictly European, one could say Eurocentric. Amsterdam served as a model from which to derive basic categories and methodology. The latter consisted essentially of mapping the city according to a matrix of 4 separate functions: working, living, recreation, transport, car traffic in particular, to which a dominant role was assigned. Once again, the CM, in their 4th Congress, set themselves nothing less than the goal of reinventing the city under the conditions of modernity. In doing so, they overlooked the city as an empirical reality, the houses, the streets, the squares, etc., as well as the respective historical conditions of their becoming, and replaced it by the abstract notion of function. Had they placed the urban phenomenon as an empirical reality at the center of their investigation, the city as a collective singular would immediately have fallen apart into a multiplicity of many individual and perhaps incompatible cases. Indeed, the cities analyzed resisted the constraints of the 4 functions, and this shortcoming was not least evident in the dystopia the CM architects were confronted with in their attempt at formulating the program of the so-called functional city. Thinking small would certainly have been not enough, but in the case of CM, the exaggerated emphasis on the overarching concept threatened to completely obscure the context. Besides, a charter of Athens never existed in reality. The text bearing this title, which was commonly perceived to be the Congress's outcome, was written 10 years after it in German-occupied Paris by a group around Le Corbusier, unauthorized by the Siams themselves. In other respects, Athens was a scandal for the modernist, the devil, as it were, who does not come when called and does not leave when he is wanted away. I'm referring to Greek antiquity, which had its supposed crowning moment in Athens and its paragon in a building ensemble unsurpassed in its majesty and impact that captivated the European architectural imagination for 2 millennia. The Acropolis and its centerpiece, the Parthenon. The modernist discomfort with this object, which had by then been endowed with a magical aura, stemmed from their anti-historicist instincts and became manifest early on. The young Charles-Édouard Jeanneret, later Le Corbusier, speaks downright of the feeling of fear that had seized him and the irritable mood in which he had found himself before he finally decided to enter the sanctuary. What he saw there found their expression in images of extreme inner agitation, almost shock, even destruction, snapshots that in any case made a mockery of any classicism. Not much was left of noble simplicity and quiet grandeur. Later, in the 1920s, when the quest for order began to infect the avant-garde, Corbusier's imagination united the Parthenon and the modern car, which was by then about to become the favorite toy of carbon modernity. Both were standard products. The standard is the result of an order imposed on human labor. He wrote apodictically, overlooking the small matter that the temple, unlike the car, had no combustion engine. Fernand Léger, another fellow traveler on Patrice too, added to this that the Acropolis was a rational work, just like a modern factory or the Eiffel Tower. Finally, Pietro Maria Bardi, a member of the Italian group at the Fourth Congress, called the Parthenon a masterpiece of rationalism. The modernists could only digest the Athenian classical heritage by bringing it in line with industrial modernity, but it always remained alien to them. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Sokratis Georgiadis.